Hey folks, welcome back to Indaba Africa. This is Chris. And on a day when a lot happened, we have yet more news report. Today, August 29th, 2020, the day that was. First, we had the Bikers Against Farm Murders and Racism rally all over South Africa, in which tens of thousands of motorcycle riders turned out to raise awareness about farm murders and to galvanize international opinion on the issue. Next, we had gender-based violence protests taking place, particularly in Cape Town, where 18 demonstrators were arrested by police. And then finally, on this date, the 29th of August, 2020, Herman Mashaba, the disgruntled former Democratic Alliance mayor of Johannesburg, has launched his own new party, ActionSA. So what exactly is going on here, folks? Herman Mashaba, the 61-year-old multimillionaire who made his fortune in the hair products business for black hair products, starting mid-1980s, a self-made man, entered politics late in life, only joined the Democratic Alliance in the last decade as an ordinary card-carrying member, as he described it, but was later elevated to the position of mayor of Johannesburg in large measure because of his solid business credentials and his pro-capitalism stance. He served as a mayor with varying comments, many agreeing that he did a fine job as mayor, others saying he did nothing. So you have to really wonder where he's at. My personal view is that he did a fine job as mayor in Johannesburg, given the situation that was handed to him in a coalition government. Not the easiest thing to rule under. But famously, in November of 2019, he resigned from the party. This comes months after the disastrous results in the 2019 national elections under party leadership from Mmusi Maimane, who led the Democratic Alliance on a path different than where it had been headed for several years. And it appeared as if the party was attempting to be a mini version of the African National Congress, which cost it a base of supporters. And the Democratic Alliance underperformed significantly its previous performance in the 2014 elections. And this is a great disappointment for the Democratic Alliance after its wildly successful 2016 municipal results to take such a deep step backwards, particularly at a time when the ANC was very unpopular. The DA not only failed to capitalize on that, they also lost ground. So Maimane did the right thing, but it took him months to reach that position. He resigned, along with many senior leaders in the party, including Ethel Trollop. But Mashaba resigned, and the excuse he gave was that he was upset with Helen Zille, who had come back in as the National Federal Chairperson. The problem with this, of course, is that when Mashaba joined the party, the Democratic Alliance, Helen Zille was the party leader. He didn't seem to have any objections to her then. So it raises the whole issue about whether Herman Mashaba is simply a political opportunist. And is he really committed to what he's doing? Well, I'll have to give the man the benefit of the doubt, at least for the moment. And I have had some harsh comments for Herman Mashaba since his resignation. But I've taken a look at their interim constitution, and unless we're being hoodwinked or the wool's being pulled over our eyes, it's quite fascinating. Let me just start with one of his comments here. He talks about foreign policy. He says it's time for hard diplomacy. We must adopt the strongest and harshest policies against an oppressive government and not punish the people of Zimbabwe. Well, it's about damn time a politician besides Ian Khama calls Zimbabwe out for the thugocracy that ZANU-PF is. Fascinating stuff, ladies and gentlemen. We shall see. Now, of course, Mashaba famously came up with something called the People's Dialogue to get South Africans talking about politics. But this little group lasted only from the 6th of December 2019 until the 29th of February 2020 when he folded it up. It is interesting. Mashaba said some of the following about launching his party, ActionSA, saying that South Africans are determined to see off a broken political system to build a prosperous, non-racial, and secure future for all its people. He says we suffer from an economy that does not grow, leaving 10 million people unemployed and families destroyed by the stress of hunger. We suffer from levels of crime that leave law-abiding citizens living in fear while criminals roam our streets with impunity. Well, I have no objections to his comments there and do not disagree with him. Taking a look at the ActionSA's interim constitution, they list their vision statement as a job for every South African, a home for every family, and a future for every child in a country healed from its past. All of that is clearly crafted to make very clear statements about opportunity and also some accountability for the apartheid past is what he's talking about from this. So going a little further, there are some things that I think a lot of people would have no difficulty with whatsoever. So first off, their values and guiding principles include the following: non-racialism, economic prosperity, respect for the rule of law, social justice, one which I'll need to talk about in more depth, electoral reform, quality education, and ethical leadership and public service. Hard to argue with any of those points, but let's talk about some specifics. Well, this should shock a lot of South Africans. And if in fact people look to Herman Mashaba as a genuine person, a genuine political figure, and not simply a political opportunist, this could be very damaging, in particular for the Democratic Alliance. We'll see if it happens, but here you go. This party rejects the failed policies of black economic empowerment. Wow. And affirmative action as implemented by the current governing party. So does that mean they'll abandon those policies altogether, or do they just take issue with the way those policies are implemented? That in itself is an interesting question, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, but this ultimately is the right statement that folks should want to hear, that policies should be aimed at improving equality of opportunity, not equality of outcome. Has Herman Mashaba been reading my playbook? These are things I've been talking about for over 30, nearly 40 years. He says South Africans must act to challenge racism in all its forms and proactively work to break down racial stereotypes and racial prejudice. Unfortunately, he's had a number of tweets in the past which in fact use racial stereotypes, particularly about white South Africans, but also stereotypes about immigrants, xenophobic comments that have gotten him in hot water. Economic prosperity, nothing to argue with there. Respect for the rule of law, particularly one point that really jumps out here. He says that our immigration system must be overhauled to attract skilled migrants while clamping down on the influx of undocumented migrants through our porous borders. Wow, birds of a feather. I think that he and Donald Trump would be able to break bread over that. Now, this is the one area where I have some difficulty with because it depends how it's implemented and what exactly ActionSA means by it. Section 1.2.5.4 of their interim constitution on social justice says the painful legacy of our past has been perpetuated by the post-democratic government. It's actually been worsened in many respects, I would argue. Too many South Africans still live without access to quality education, basic services, and proper housing. This must change. No objection to that whatsoever. People living in poverty doesn't help anybody. People in poverty don't make very good consumers of products for businesses. We must act as one against all forms of prejudice and injustice and actively work to build an inclusive society. Well, yeah, the ANC's been talking about that for 26 years. Well, it kind of stopped talking about it 10 years ago, but they've gone the opposite direction. Now, this should get a lot of attention and may cost the Democratic Alliance and possibly the Freedom Front Plus some voters in the future. Land reform must be accelerated. Whoops, that won't lose votes. Land must be redistributed in a fair manner. That's not going to cost anyone votes. We stand against expropriation without compensation and amending the Constitution. Now, that will get people's attention. The reason is because the party constitution says land reform can be achieved within the existing legal framework, legislative framework. We just need the political will and competent leadership to execute its provisions. Well, indeed, I agree wholeheartedly. And in fact, I said as much as my article on land and poverty in South Africa over 2 years ago, nearly 3 years ago, which I published on LinkedIn. Talking about the existing mechanisms are there. It's simply a lack of political will and an abysmal level of funding for the department responsible for land in South Africa. The lack of extension services or credit or training and vocational training for aspiring farmers. Yes, so they are against expropriation without compensation, ActionSA. Wow. Calling for electoral reform, talking specifically about the way people vote for politicians in South Africa. The legislative arm of government is prioritized at the expense of direct accountability. Absolutely. Voting for a party list and then having people you did not select become your representatives to Parliament is an abysmal way to conduct representative government. It's not very representative. It represents the party, not the people, because those politicians who are appointed to those positions by the party that wins proportional representation represent the party and are accountable to the party, not to the people. And that is not a legitimate way to do business, but that is how South Africa does business. Now, he talks in here in their constitution also about combining proportional representation with a constituency-based system. I think this would be a bit challenging, but it is interesting. Calls for quality education, and finally, ethical leadership and public service. Unethical leadership and unqualified public servants are a problem in South Africa. It's being held back. State capture, the looting of public resources, and the normalization of public sector corruption has diverted away funds. Well, indeed it has. On the surface, ladies and gentlemen, all of the things here in the interim constitution for ActionSA are certainly reasonable. And with the exception of some of the provisions in the social justice section of this, I have very few objections. And in fact, it looks like stealing a lot of my talking points when it comes to conservative governance and market-based capitalism and equality of opportunity. So you see, folks, the role of the state is to ensure a level playing field. so that everyone has an equal opportunity to exceed and excel and to be a success. Not equality of outcomes. No, that doesn't enrich anyone. That doesn't rise any boats. That simply brings us all down to the lowest common denominator, whether it's in education or it's wealth or it's prosperity or lack thereof. So it is interesting, ladies and gentlemen. Will we give Herman Mashaba a fair shake? Well, I'll give him a fair shake. If I can get him to come on my channel, Chris White Africa, I'll give him a fair interview, and I'll ask him how he got to where he's at, where he plans to go, and how serious his party ActionSA is. The multimillionaire certainly has people's attention with the launch of this party today. A lot of skeptics out there, particularly those in the Democratic Alliance, but not simply in the Democratic Alliance. And virtually every position he takes is in direct opposition of the African National Congress, which is his main target. But with the Democratic Alliance over 20%, the Economic Freedom Fighters at just under 10%, the Freedom Front Plus at around 3%, what's left for ActionSA? We shall see, ladies and gentlemen. This is an interesting development on the 29th of August, 2020. Where will Herman Mashaba go? Will he be able to capture any municipalities in 2021? I seriously doubt that, but launching today gives him, presuming he sticks with his party, gives him an opportunity to build a base in time for the 2024 national elections. We'll see what happens in South Africa. So to Herman Mashaba, I say good luck, and I'll be watching, and we'll see what happens. And an open invitation to Herman Mashaba to come on to Chris White Africa so we can hear what you have to say and learn more about ActionSA. Well, thank you so much, folks, for listening. If you're not a subscriber to Chris White Africa, hey, take a second, smash that subscription button right down there and become a subscriber. It costs absolutely nothing. Feel free to toggle the bell icon. That'll give you notifications of my future videos, my live streams. If you want to leave a comment, please leave a comment. Abusive comments will either be laughed at, used for abusive comment videos, or simply ignored or deleted. And finally, folks, I ask that you smash the like button right down there because likes drive viewership. And so on this day, this video is about Herman Mashaba and his launch of ActionSA. Best of luck, Herman. We'll see where it goes. Take care, folks.